We'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's Planning and Zoning meeting. Our first item of business is to look at a small video to show you how we rerun things here. We'd like to remind you that if you'd like to speak to any given case, there are blue cards located at the back of the auditorium. If you'd like to speak, please fill one of those out and bring it up to one of the staff members in front of us. Let's roll the video.
Welcome to the City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board meeting. We appreciate your interest in the future development of our community and welcome your comments. At this time, we ask you to turn off or select the vibrate option on your cell phones and pagers. Today's agenda includes a consent agenda. These items will be read into the record and acted on in one motion. If you would like to speak on any of these items, please fill out one of the blue cards located in the back of the room and bring it to the front railing. These items will then be removed from the consent agenda and voted on individually. Each case will be heard first by the applicant, then the public, followed by city staff and board members. The Planning and Zoning Board will then make their recommendations to the City Council. The City Council meetings are held twice a month at 5:45 p.m. in the Council chambers. To find out when the City Council will consider your planning and zoning item, please call the Planning Division at 480-644-2385 or log on to the city's website. All planning and zoning meetings are broadcast live and rebroadcast on Mesa Channel 11. To view the programming schedule, log on to www.mesachannel11.com.
Right, we'd like the record to show that Mr. Michael Clement is absent today, probably on some fun vacation that we're not on. Our first item in business is to consider the minutes from the February 19th study session and the February 20th regular hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Carter, I'll make a motion, but before that, I would like to take a minute and congratulate Mr. Arnett on a wonderful Phoenix Marathon. Very successful and great for the City of Mesa. Thank you for doing that. I will move for approval on these minutes.
Excellent. It was a fun marathon. They had kids that ran in it.
Wonderful.
So, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, please vote. Did you want to push abstain?
I did, yes.
Okay. We have 4 ayes. Mr. Clement is absent, and Mr. Arnett and Ms. Hudson are abstaining. So the motion passes, and that is all of the cases on today's agenda.
No, we haven't done the cases yet.
Oh, that's right.
That was minutes.
Minutes. Oh, my gosh. Beth, would you like to take over today?
We'll now go to the agenda.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, let's go to the consent agenda because our lovely Suzanne Johnson will be reading the consent agenda today.
Okay. The first one is C1, case Z1250, District 3, District 3, 146 West Baseline Road, located east of Country Club Drive on the north side of Baseline Road, approximately 0.99 acres. Modification of the existing council use permit and site plan modification. McDonald's USA owner. This case has been tabled. Next case, Z1308 in District 5, the 7100 to 7200 blocks of East McDowell Road, north side, parcel 51 of Las Sendas PAD, located east of Power Road on the north side of McDowell Road, approximately 22.73 acres. Modification of the Desert Creek PAD and site modification plan of the residentially zoned portion of the development in the RM-2-PAD. Talon Properties owner. Staff recommendation is continuance to April 17th, 2013. Next case is C3, which is zoning case Z, 1307, District 5, the 7800 to 7900 blocks of East University Drive, south side, and the 200 to 300 blocks of South 80th Street, west side, approximately 24 acres. Modification of the villas at Montana Vista PAD. This request will allow modification to the development standards to single residence lots. Pulte Homes owner. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. C4 is case Z1312 in District 5. The 8800 to 8900 blocks of East Range Rider Trail South Side, located north of McDowell Road and east of Howe Road, approximately 17 acres, rezoned from Maricopa County R135 to City of Mesa RS35. This will establish City of Mesa zoning on recently annexed property. Land Holdings Investment Company, LLC is owner. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. C5 is zoning case C13-13, also in District 5. The 8800 to 8900 blocks of East Range Rider Trail South Side, located north of McDowell Road and east of Howe Road, approximately 17 acres, rezoned from RS35 to RS35 PAD. This request will allow the development of single residence lots. Land Holdings Investments Company, LLC is the owner. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. D1 is villas at Montana Vista, District 5, the 7000 to 7900 blocks of East University Drive, South Side, and the 200 to 300 blocks of South 80th Street, West Side, approximately 24 acres. This request will allow modification to the development standards of single residence lots. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. D2 is Range Rider, District 5, the 8800 to 8900 blocks of East Range Rider Trail, South Side, located north of McDowell Road and east of Haas Road, approximately 17 acres. This will allow the development of single residence lots. Staff recommendation approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I make a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Arnett. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Please cast your votes. The consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you all very much for being here. Our next item on the agenda is to hear a presentation and discuss and provide direction on the Mesa General Plan. Mr. Wesley?
Mr. Ellsworth.
Mr. Ellsworth, we haven't seen you at the podium in a long, long time.
Few years. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here to discuss the update to the general plan, some of the process that we've been through so far and the direction that we're heading, to get some discussion and some feedback on how this is proceeding from this point forward. My presentation is about 200 slides, and you're supposed to react. No, okay. I'm going to keep it brief. All right. Quick background. The state statute requires that we update the general plan every 10 years. Our current general plan was adopted in 2002. We're past that 10-year mark, and we're currently in the process of updating our general plan. We're coordinating this update with the updates to the transportation plan, the transit plan, and the park and recreation plan. Our schedule has us creating a draft plan by the end of this summer. We'll have that out for review, finalize that in hopes of having our final draft in the first part of 2014, and we're not hoping. We will have this on the ballot for the vote of the citizens in November of 2014. What we've done is we've gone out with our citizen outreach to get comments, feedback from the community at large. We've utilized neighborhood outreach and their Building Stronger Neighborhoods program to discuss this with neighborhoods from all of the city council districts. We've been at several city events, Celebrate Mesa. We've got several events coming up that we'll be holding and attending. And what we've asked people to do is to look forward 30 years into the future. What does 2040 look like for you? What do you envision Mesa being? What do you envision it becoming? When you look at Mesa, what are the changes that you can see, or what is it that you would like Mesa to look like? What we've done is we've gone out is we have utilized several methods to get people to envision change that can happen over 30 years. One of the most dramatic that we could come up with was creating an animation of Dobson and Main Street. And as you look at this animation, this is the Tri-City Mall in 1980. And several of you have seen this animation before. The parking lot's full. It's Christmas time. And 30 years down the road, who would have imagined in 1980 that there would no longer be a mall at Dobson and Main? So as we've gone out, we've told people, don't just limit yourself to what you know Mesa to be now. Imagine it in the future. Tri-City Mall is now our first light rail transit stop. Currently it has a Safeway on the site, but the pressures for development on that site are tending towards a high-density mixed use as light rail enters Mesa. The next is we've had them visualize what population growth looks like throughout the decades in Mesa. Again, we show that we've intensified the density in historic Mesa on the west side as we've grown over the last 2 decades towards the east. We're actually hitting the edge of our planning area on Meridian Road. And so as that bounce back occurs, where are we focusing next? This here is a graphic just kind of illustrating some of the questions that pop up. We're going to add an estimated 165,000 new residents to Mesa over the next 30 years. Where do they work? Where do they play? Where do they shop? What kind of amenities do we have for arts and culture, for parks and recreation, for education? We've asked people to think about the where, when, and the how. As we've gone out, we've also asked them to think about what your community looks like. What does a quality neighborhood look like? What are some of those things that you find aesthetically pleasing? What does Mesa do right? What does Mesa need more of? Likewise, as we looked at the commercial areas in Mesa, one of the things that we've talked a lot about with people are the creation of neighborhood villages and centers, regional centers. How do we draw more people to a common area to create more of the community rather than the boom burb that Mesa is? Likewise, transportation has been a key factor as we got out and discussed with people. How do we get around Mesa? Not only how do we get around, but in talking about community, transportation is the key factor in drawing people together at these key locations and creating a Mesa that's more pedestrian friendly, that's more vibrant, that's more energetic and aesthetically pleasing. As we've gone out, we've completed surveys at each of these events. Overwhelmingly, people have said we would like to maintain our existing neighborhoods. We want to maintain that nice family feel that Mesa has. However, we also want to make sure that these spaces have great amenities for us. We want to make sure that as we look at the linkages between neighborhoods, we want to create those so that we can feel part of a community, that we can feel that we're part of what's happening out on the arterial streets. We want to maintain great education and great areas for jobs and employment. One of the things that pops up, though, is they want to maintain the unique aspects of Mesa. And as we've looked out at what makes Mesa unique, what makes it recognizable, and as you look at Mesa, what is it that people recognize of Mesa? If you were to show a photo, would anybody recognize that as Mesa? So we're doing this general plan update. We're doing that with all of this in mind. Creation of community, bringing the community together in a way that's vibrant, that's pleasing, memorable, recognizable, unique. There are many aspects to Mesa. Dobson Ranch area has its own unique nature. It's different than Red Mountain Ranch. So it's quite a challenge. Our planning area is 170 square miles. We also collected lots of comments from the people out there as they came through and came by, and the overarching themes were they want more shade, they want more recreation, they want the ability to get out, they want the ability to feel comfortable as they move throughout the city. A lot of the people that we talked to was all about connection and transportation and how do we utilize those public spaces. Most of them talked about the heat and the inability to feel comfortable using those, particularly for 6 months out of the year. So this kind of gets us to the direction we're heading. Where we found Mesa to be, Mesa is the largest boom burb in the nation. Basically what that means is we're a city of sprawl. And as we're looking at the sprawl, how do we correct that sprawl or utilize what we have in order to repair that and make it into a community that can become more integrated and stand on its own. As we do that, the term we're using right now is a 21st century American city. We want the city to be that recognizable area. When you look at the Phoenix area, you go, oh, that's the place, that's right next to Mesa, right? Instead of Mesa's that somewhere around Scottsdale. We want Mesa to be recognizable. We want it to be unique. We need to build on what we have and make it more recognizable. As we do this, we focused on 3 areas. We've separated out into creating quality and unique neighborhoods, creating a stable and diverse economy, and creating great public spaces and high cultural amenities, high quality cultural amenities. So the direction we're heading, this is the draft of the outline for the general plan itself. There will be the basic introduction, the background on Mesa, why we need the general plan, why it's important, what its purpose is. And then we're jumping right into section 2, the transforming of the city of Mesa. There will be an outline starting out with our land use map. We're going into character types. I'll get into that in just a minute. And then we'll delve into neighborhoods, economic development, and public spaces. Within that, we will cover all of the required elements from the state statute, elements such as economic development, transportation, parks and recreation, land use. All those elements, instead of being separate sections of the general plan, will be incorporated into these subsections of section 2 of the general plan itself. As we looked into this, we've identified the key issues under each of those 3 main sub-areas. Maintaining the neighborhoods and their unique character, making it pedestrian friendly, investment and reinvestment into the existing neighborhoods. How do we ignite private investment, and how do we utilize the public investment that we have available to us to energize our neighborhoods? Also, in looking at growing the economy, making a stable economy and creating employment, we're taking our lead off of the strategic initiatives from the City Council and from the iMesa project. We are looking at the HEAT initiatives. We're maintaining our focus on education and healthcare, and looking for our regional retail opportunities. One of the comments that we've received a lot from this board are is this plan going to focus as much on job creation as the last plan? The answer to that is it will still continue to focus on job creation. I believe what you'll find different in this plan is it's focusing on job creation as it applies to the unique aspect of Mesa as a whole. How do we integrate that in with the neighborhoods, in with the open spaces, and how do we utilize that to draw these great employment opportunities? And the final one is the idea of rich public spaces and cultural amenities. Mesa has a great parks and recreation plan that was just adopted. How do we build on that? How do we link people to these areas? How do we get them to utilize them more? How do we utilize them to create areas within the city of Mesa that create that sense of community, and not only on the citywide level, but even down into the neighborhood level? The final chapters will focus on public infrastructure and administration. The city's still growing. The city's aging. How do we ensure that we have the adequate amount of infrastructure and public amenities that will allow the city to maintain its quality of service? And finally, the final chapter is always on administration. How do we go about our general plan amendments? What are the requirements for that? What constitutes a general plan amendment? How do we amend portions of this general plan or update it? And finally, what are those areas? Who is responsible for the implementation of each of those elements? Now we get into the character types. This is new to I think we've gone over it in front of this board a little bit before, but for the audience, I'll go over it just a little bit more. Instead of focusing on land use, our current land use map in the 2025 general plan acts almost as a pre-zoning map. We have several layers of density, both for our residential, our commercial, and our industrial types of use. It's very parcel specific. If you own a certain parcel, you can look at the map and you can see that it's designated for low density residential 0 to 1 units per acre, all the way up to 15 plus units per acre. What we're proposing is to take that back and put the general back into general plan. We're going to designate character types, character areas. The main and predominant character in Mesa is this neighborhood. There are subtypes to these neighborhoods that we're building in. The character of the neighborhood up in the Desert Uplands area is very different than the character of the neighborhood down in Dobson Ranch. So we're building in descriptions of that character. So if you're coming in and you're looking to develop high-density residential apartments, and you're looking at the character up in the Desert Uplands, you're obviously going to have a conflict with the general plan, and you'll need to spend some time showing how your proposal is meeting the intent of the general plan itself. It makes it a little bit more fluid, a lot more fluid. It allows for more discussion. It allows for more variability within the development process itself. As we're looking at the commercial, one of the other character types is the neighborhood village center. These are the small centers that are 15 to 25 acres. Generally, you'll see these in Mesa. They're typically the Walmart neighborhood markets kind of fit this bill. It's a small neighborhood, typically serves the neighborhood, a small neighborhood center typically serves the community within about a mile around the site. Whereas you go up to the next layer, which would be our community commercial centers, those are the larger ones. They go to 2 to 4 miles out for their service areas. Within that, we have a subtype for regional commercial scale, and those are the ones that draw from the entire region. A new neighborhood corridor type, well, the transit corridor is a new character type to Mesa. As we bring light rail in, and as we've introduced several transit stations in Mesa now, and as we look at the expansion of light rail over the next 30 to 40 years, there's a specific character type that will develop along those transit corridors. So we're identifying where those are, what the expectation on development is within there. And along with that comes another one which we call an urban core. We've designated urban core. I'll show the map in just a minute. Well, actually, I'll show it now. The urban core areas, we've got our traditional downtown. We will continue to focus on downtown as the central business area of Mesa. It is the area that we would denote as our core. But there are 2 other cores that have been identified as we've done planning throughout the last decade down in the the Phoenix Mesa Gateway area at Elliott and Ellsworth Road. The Eastmark project has identified an urban core at Elliott and Ellsworth, and also at Ellsworth and Ray Roads, right where the new passenger terminal is being proposed. Each of those has its own unique character and what we will look for as development occurs in those specific areas. As you look at this map, you can see the transit corridors. These are very, very loose and very rough draft based on what we know today. These are still in discussion. In fact, the whole map is a draft. But we're looking at the light rail line. Does it stop at Gilbert? Does it proceed on to Power? As you come down Power, does it go all the way down to the airport where we see the entrance today, or does it continue on down somehow and get to Ellsworth and Ray Roads for the new passenger terminal? So this is still in flux as far as the development of the plan. What we're focusing on, though, is the character and how do we control and put controls on the character of development versus specifically mandating this is what will be built on your specific parcel of property. As we're going through that, some of the challenges we face with that are adding a level of security to surrounding residents for a level of comfort in what may be built around them. As we do that, the descriptions on those character areas is very important and vital. And also, as we look into how we will review plans of development against the general plan to provide a level of comfort to the citizens of Mesa that their current land uses will be protected against incompatible land uses. Some of the other employment districts. We've broken the employment districts into basically 2 types. We've called one employment and the other one specialty. The difference is employment are those areas of general industrial and manufacturing warehouse uses. The specialty areas are those areas that it mainly denotes a campus-like setting. Those will be the major education campuses, the health campuses, business and research parks. Anywhere that focuses a campus-like setting on a specific type of employment, we're designating those areas to be more specific in their character and their design and how they interact with the surrounding community. One of the areas that we're still discussing, if you look on the Eastmark site, that's a carryover. Right now we're just calling it mixed-use community, which is what it's currently designated in our current general plan. There are a couple of other areas of town that may be designated that. We have our PC zoning district that enacts those areas of town where a community plan is developed, and essentially they're developing their own zoning code for those areas. And so we're working on that as a character area and how that ties into this concept. Any questions on the character areas? But what I'm finishing up with here is we've got the iMesa Village meetings that are coming up. The last week in March and the first 2 weeks of April, every Tuesday and Thursday evening, we have a meeting in the 6 iMesa village areas. They roughly coincide with the 6 districts. In each one of those districts, we'll be having an open house type setting where you can come, and we'll have several staff members there to discuss the aspects of the general plan, what it is, provide some more neighborhood outreach and education, but also to provide more information on a lot of the things that I've presented today. We're going to generate feedback. We're going to see if we have any comments, concerns, and so we can utilize that in developing our first draft of the plan itself. Our first one takes place next Tuesday on March 26th at Whittier Elementary. It'll be come at 6:30. At 7 we'll have a presentation, and we'll be open until they shut us down. And with that, I will take any questions. Upcoming meetings. We're going to be at Falcon Field this Saturday. We're at another Building Stronger Neighborhood meeting on Thursday. We're basically everywhere in the next few months. So if there's a citywide event, more than likely we'll be there. We're trying to generate as much excitement and interest in this plan as we can, as the citizens of Mesa need to be informed in order to ultimately approve this plan. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Board members.
I have a question. When I was looking at the map of the Fiesta district, it just seems to look like a regular commercial area. I was kind of anticipating there would be more of a district feel to that it would be more of a character area.
I thought we had a little bit of a district feel in there too. As we look at Alma School and that is a discussion we've had lately. The character area you're looking at there is called what we've titled right now Community Commercial Center. The Community Commercial Center in our current plan, community commercial would denote a typical shopping center with pad buildings. Within that, within the character description that we have currently, we're building in the opportunity for mixed use, a mixture of uses. So as we look at the Fiesta area and the future of the Fiesta area, we're mixing in some high-density residential with the office, with the employment, with the retail that's going on. So that's why you're seeing mainly the red. Some of the first versions here, it looked a lot like what you're seeing over here at Chrisman and the Freeway. It was a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different things. And so one of the things that we're working on before we get to the draft is how do we define community commercial centers? Are we actually saying what it is that we're intending to do? What it's intending to denote is a place where, yes, you will find that typical commercial corner, but it can also be something greater and grander. And so it might need to be a separate district. But that is one of the areas we've looked at and we've continued to discuss.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just add just a little bit to what Mr. Ellsworth said. We are still looking and still developing it as draft. And so we may develop some additional subcategories because of places like Fiesta Mall and other areas, some of the older strip centers that we know are not very lively today, and they're not likely to revive as just strictly commercial centers. And so labeling them a commercial center might not, it may even be the title's wrong in that particular category where we know it needs some tweaking. We just have to figure out exactly what it is. And the other part of it is part of the reason we are working on the general plan for the city. We have sub-area plans that come in and provide more of that detail. And so that's area 2 where we'll come back through hopefully all the community eventually and get that next level and get more detail where we can get more specific about what are the needs in the Fiesta area, for example, and describing that and working that in more detail than we can when we do a general plan.
What satisfies the law as far as putting to vote? Is it a land use plan? Is it what is it? Do you have to have transportation included, or
the state statute specifically calls out several elements that need to be within your general plan? There's about
there are about a dozen different elements that have to be in there. The Parks and Recreation, the circulation element. It talks about housing, revitalization, redevelopment, conservation,
energy.
all of that's in the state
energy,
statute?
right, it's all in there.
I just wondered if it was more of the land use situation, but it's more inclusive.
One of the things that's different that we were trying to point out here, in our current general plan, each of those has its own section. And we're trying to incorporate all that into the one vision so that they all come together to create that vision and to create the Mesa that we're looking for.
The 150 surveys that you have and you've been basing a lot of this off of, where did those come from? Who responded? Who did you invite people, or was it a response from the community?
Okay. There's a few ways you could get to the survey. I believe the survey is available out on the website, but mainly it's at our Building Stronger Neighborhoods meetings. Each of those are through the Neighborhood Outreach Office. As we go to those and attend those, we have people filling those out at that location, and that's where we provide most of our conversations with the community. Every event that we go to, we take the surveys with us. We've been to Celebrate Mesa. We've been to City Hall at City Hall at the Mall? I can't remember what it was. There's a lot of hip-hop music, though, and we were right by the speaker. But basically, we've been everywhere we go, we have our surveys with us.
But you said this was based on about 150 surveys.
That's pretty much the
feedback.
response that we've got so far. A lot of the goals and the vision statements that we've got aren't only based on the surveys, they're also based on several of the planning elements that we've had over the past few years, the Central Main Plan, the visioning from IMESA, the visioning from the Council strategic initiatives. The questions from those surveys were based largely in part on the visioning that's taken place in those other activities over the past several years.
I guess my point was 150 surveys in a city this large is not very much input. But also, are you still accepting those kind of feedbacks,
Correct.
the survey or comments?
Right. On our website, it's always open for comments. We have a user voice site on the website. It operates much like IMESA. In fact, we get comments on IMESA sometimes that would apply to the general plan itself. There are still several ways to get feedback. We'll be accepting feedback all the way up until the point we have our final version.
I have a couple other comments. It's a very interesting place you've come now. People want shade and they want grass. And yet everything that we're allowing in this city is no grass and no shade trees. And so however you're going to change this climate so we have cool air and we can use these things 12 months of the year, or 11, let's say 11. It's an interesting try and fit it all in.
Yeah, as we've talked to various divisions and departments about the different sections, I was talking about the grass with I believe it environmental services and water resources. Mm-hmm. And they're not opposed to grass, they're opposed to grass that's not being utilized. And so
What does that mean?
well,
Yeah.
you've got like passive and active recreation sites. If you're watering 500 acres of grass and nobody uses it, is it a wise use of the water resource?
But Tom, you would have to agree that it's been very discouraged to have grass anywhere.
I will agree. Yes, there are some current policies on water conservation that would discourage turf.
And
that's something
trees,
that
and shade trees.
That's something that would come up inside the general plan itself. We would have goals that would discuss water conservation and aesthetics, and where those goals fall in line, and who implements those, and what plans those fall under for the specific policy on turf and the use of turf and the development as they relate to that. So that's the general plan set over the umbrella that would target all of those areas. So
I have one other comment. It's very easy to point to certain neighborhoods, like the Desert Uplands. They're an easy neighborhood to capture what they are, what the guidelines are. It's easy to say, okay, we have the citrus neighborhoods. That's pretty easy. But it seems like the bulk of the neighborhoods in the city of Mesa aren't in any of those.
correct.
They're existing neighborhoods that have been there years and years and years. And to try and capture or support those neighborhoods is maybe more important than some of these others, even the historic neighborhoods that have been designated, the down around Gateway, whatever.
That's part of the discussion of the transformation of the city itself into areas of uniqueness. We have areas of uniqueness, but you're correct. A majority of the neighborhoods in the city of Mesa are very similar and don't have that unique character. So it's part of what we're proposing in this type of format is how do we take the neighborhoods we've got? Can you identify areas or activity nodes or centers that you can take those those neighborhoods that exist out there in the middle of Mesa where the growth from the 80s and the 90s occurred, and occurred so fast that it just became kind of vanilla. And how do you integrate the circulation patterns, the aesthetics, and create that vibrancy that create a uniqueness? Can there be a uniqueness at Lindsay and Broadway Road?
Does there have to be?
Well,
Or can we support what's there? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Why are we trying to transform things that are working if they're working?
Go ahead. Mr. Chairman, Board Member Coons, you're absolutely right. There's not necessarily a need to transform just to transform. It's the idea of maintaining the neighborhoods. And because they could, just because of their kind of plainness over time, decay because there's nothing exciting about there. So it's a maintenance issue that's the important issue. And so maybe in some cases there's some things we can do to help support the long-term maintenance. That's what we're really after.
That's what I'm looking at,
Right.
is how do you support what's there
Which in some cases...
without forcing a certain either transformation, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it.
Right. And so adding something, though, that gives it a little bit more identity and center or focus can help with that preservation. That's what we're after is the maintenance. That's really it.
And we found that as we went around the community. There were neighborhoods that were just fine with the way it was. There are other neighborhoods that were saying, something's off here. We need to be able to have some types of tools that we can utilize to come in and bring some life back into our community. So you're correct. There were lots of areas, people that we talked to that said, there's nothing wrong, don't fix it. That's why we're trying to set up in this format, not necessarily to force it, but provide the opportunities as communities come together and we get down into the next level, into the sub-area planning, and you can have that discussion. Maybe there is no need to change a neighborhood, but just simply maintain.
I love the idea of the pedestrian-friendly things that are going on, such as paths on the canals, those kind of things. But I also think we need to balance our time, energy, and resources on doing that when, like you're saying, it may be a 6 months of the year type thing. How do we support other things that then can be used on the off time when you're not out as much as right now?
One of the goals in the current general plan that I looked at, it dealt more with infrastructure. But the goal on the infrastructure was to look at how do we maintain and build upon what we have rather than rip it up and start over. You can apply the same thing to the amenities within the city of Mesa. Are there those parks that currently exist out there? If we just did development a little bit differently, would they be utilized more? And so you can apply that to a lot of areas of Mesa in a lot of different aspects.
Tom, I have a couple of questions for you. One of my big questions is, how is the general plan going to enhance the economic viability and sustainability of the city?
How is the general plan?
How is it going to help that?
Well, what the general plan does is establish those overarching goals for that, and then within that there will be the implementation elements in that final section.
That's very nice words, yes.
There we go.
But
it sets up the basic framework for what we'll be looking for employment in Mesa. It will also set up, what is that development type that attracts certain types of employment.
There's my question there, right? You hit it. As far as employment districts, which are certainly very important, but how is the city going to sustain itself from these employment districts? Is there revenue that comes from these employment districts? How is the city going to maintain supporting itself? How's it going to pay your salary and the staff's salary for that matter? From what I'm seeing so far, with the great emphasis on employment that the past administration had under Mayor Hawker, it hasn't done so good, because while we've had lots of places for employment, we've neglected, in my opinion, the opportunity to enhance our ability to collect sales tax or other means to help sustain the city. And so here we are, one of the few cities in the United States, and maybe it's the only one, that does not have a property tax, and yet we're trying to survive on sales tax, yet we're not really pushing those things that would help us get more sales tax or those types of things. Like I'm looking at the little map here on the screen, And I'm going, and Suzanne's comment was, I thought was very right on, is we have a light rail, looks like it's, theoretically planned, going down Country Club. And Country Club really doesn't have much to it at all. And yet it's avoiding over there where you've got the Fiesta District, which has the capability of being a huge retail employment center, and yet we're kind of turning our backs on it and saying, maybe that's not what we want. We can't get people to it. So I'm real concerned as a citizen here in Mesa that there's a point where we can't sustain ourselves. We can't build libraries. We can't build parks. We can't do those kinds of things unless we have revenue. And the major revenue, as I understand it, and I could be completely wrong, but is coming from the sales tax area. We used to rely on permits and impact fees, but we do have residential going on, but we're building out. We're almost finished. And so where is the income going to come from to support us as a city? And how is that implemented inside this general plan?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'll help Tom with this one, too. We can't give you specifics at this point. We're still developing the plan in terms of the details, but we hear you. And I think the way we're going to attempt to address that is through a couple of things. We do need to pay more attention to our commercial centers. That's why we've called out the village neighborhood centers. They're important for keeping that local sales tax here and providing good shopping close by, so you don't have to go out of the community for that daily shopping. And then within the community and regional centers, that's why those are emphasized, and they're also and talked about in the section that we have on economic development. That's where we will look for what tools we can develop to help support our primary commercial areas and build those up and make them more of the regional draws than they have become recently, to see what we can do to attract more people from locally and outside to come to these regional centers and provide those sales tax dollars. Exactly how we're going to do that, we can't say yet because we haven't got that level of analysis, but we do think that's important also, and we'll try to put more emphasis on that.
Well, I find this an interesting discussion because I think City Council, it's been drummed into all of our heads that employment is the thing that Mesa needs, but employment doesn't sustain the city unless we're going to start taxing everyone's income and doing individual or city income taxes or some other way to get money, because we certainly aren't. Our libraries, for instance, our cultural facilities, our libraries certainly aren't open as much as the public would like them to be open.
Or as many as they would like.
Yeah, or there's many of them, more distributive, like they used to have. They had a plan 20 years ago or so where we were going to have distributive libraries around the city, and we can't do that because we don't have the income. The quality of the architecture that the city does, the fire stations and some things. I think the architects are somewhat limited. You go around to Gilbert and you look at their fire stations, incredibly enhanced architecturally and fit into their neighborhoods in a marvelous way, whereas our stuff, our city municipal buildings are somewhat passé on the aesthetic side of things, mainly because it's cost. We have to be, as a city, very cost conscious. And I'm hoping that when this thing is finally unveiled in 2014 or 15, whenever this public's going to finally vote on it, that you guys, as the persons that are doing this, are going to put this stuff in there, because I would hate to live in a bankrupt city.
Yep.
And yet we don't seem to be going anywhere else right now.
Mr. Chairman, actually we'll have the draft plan available by October, so somehow between now and then we're going to see what we can do to figure out to answer your questions. We look forward to your assistance in coming up with the solutions to how we address those.
Can I chime in? Because we've had similar discussions on the board and what have you, but one of the key things was to have the general plan not look like our zoning map, because essentially that's how it looks right now.
Yes.
And it's a problem because it doesn't allow you flexibility to address these areas. But Fiesta District, for example, well, that extends all the way to the hospitals, the Mesa Community College. It's a whole area that has to change. because the writing's on the wall. Retail at that location is probably not going to sustain itself to the extent that it's been there in the past. So I think in a small way, what the city's trying to do is to allow flexibility in terms of how that's planned and the types of uses that are allowed to help entice different types of development. As a city, as a municipality, I think that's what they can do to help bridge that gap.
I know, but right now, the only vehicle the city has for really developing or sustaining itself in any large degree is sales tax. And yet, we aren't pursuing that, and it's been somewhat discouraged in replacing some of the employment bases that were identified under the previous administration.
I think what we're proposing under this format is that we're not just focusing straightly on jobs and employment as the answer for funding the city. Funding of a city is really multifaceted, but people tend to shop and recreate and spend sales tax dollars where they work and live. If we can create an environment that's more of a community where people feel comfortable living and working, the dollars come there also.
I don't know if I want
How
to
do you
go to
attract?
bag. I don't come here to
what we're
Mesa.
trying to do is create an area. Well, there you just said it.
Of course, I'd
how
look
do you
great
create
if
the
it
Mesa
back,
that's unique enough that the citizens of Mesa will stay in Mesa to do their?
I don't think that's true anymore.
Things.
You look at what's developing in southeast Mesa, a great powerhouse that's going to be right down there. Where is everyone going to go? They're not, at least for the next 5 years or so, they're headed down to the Santan Mall. They're not coming to Mesa. Where do the people go that are over in the Dobson Ranch area? Do they really come to Fiesta Mall to shop? They go to Chandler Mall. I think we need to put some really heavy emphasis, of course this is my opinion only, some real heavy incentives and developer opportunities to these areas to really enhance them to be a powerhouse. If we can't do that, we're just going to end up as the bedroom community that we've been all these years, that everyone still kind of looks to us as. It's a great place to have a home and to raise a family. And I've raised mine here since when we moved 79, excuse me. And I love Mesa. But you look at it as comparison to what's happening in other municipalities around us, and we're still looking old and stodgy and unprogressive and just laboring along. So I hope that you guys will energize this thing and put some real oomph into it. I see this lovely thing that's like 5-6 pages long on employment districts, but there's nothing on how to raise money for the city. So I hope that you all at least
you're looking
make that, instead of a secondary or a tertiary thing, make it more of a primary issue on this.
I think we're on the same page.
Okay, cool. I'll be quiet now. Board members, I've taken up too much time. Does anybody else have stuff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think all of the ideas are fantastic and the brainstorm is wonderful. I would like to request maybe we could put this on our study session agenda for next month, and let's really debate this, and let's really offer suggestions, and let's really sort of offer what we feel, as opposed to in this public forum, we can maybe offer that feedback in that. I'm very passionate about everything that's been said, and I have a lot of things to say, but I'm not so certain that this is the forum for that. So I'd like to put that on the agenda for our next study session.
Excellent idea. All right. Do you have any other questions for Mr. Ellsworth or Mr. Wesley? If not, thank you very much.
Sure. The thing to realize about this, it is a very, very rough draft. The transportation corridors that you brought up, they were thrown on there for illustration of what they would look like. So,
and is there a different, more general map, not so detailed, that would speak to just sections of the city alone, not use sections or? Are you
saying neighborhoods?
I'm kind of saying neighborhoods, but I'm not, because I'm envisioning a Mesa where there are sections, where inside each section there are subsections. Does that map exist?
Well, it
For example, if you go to a
we
city
have
like-
draft version of something of which this is the 10,000 foot level. As you zoom in, it'll be a lot more specific, based a lot on context and a lot on the sub area plans that get a lot more specific. So as you were to zoom into Central Maine, we have a Central Maine plan that gets very specific about land use types.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the bigger picture. I think that people always want to belong to something, and if you live in a certain area, you should belong to a certain area, or, and I think from a branding standpoint, a marketing standpoint, if a citizen or a homeowner or people that live and reside in Mesa feel a part, they belong to a certain section of Mesa. I'm thinking of in Italy, in Siena, Italy, where they have this competition of little sections of this area, and they all send their best horse rider. And the socioeconomic, it just doesn't apply to this competition, but they all belong to this. And I don't think that I think we're losing a lot of our belonging in the city because we haven't really fostered that type of an environment. We're too busy trying to say, well, we've got great economic activity here, we've got a great education center here, we've got a great transportation center here. Let's go ahead and brand it that. And then everybody let's belong to it, support it and love it and move forward. But I think that we need to back way up and take a look at our city and, maybe have folks belong to something before we start to say, well, we've got something good here. Let's just go with it. But anyway, again, that's a different discussion.
Well, I know you all are kind of constrained by City Council's direction to do on employment basis, because I know that's been the mantra for many, many decades. I would hope that you would reach beyond that mantra and get that, move other directions.
But when it comes down to it, folks, it is a city council.
It is. They're the ones elected to direct the city. I just hope that they widen their vision a little bit.
That's part of our neighborhood outreach. The citizens of the city of Mesa actually approved this by vote.
That's right. And it's happened recently in Scottsdale where the voters turned it down. And so the citizens at large are a very important part of this also.
What was the reasoning that they turned it down? Was there general consensus?
I haven't taken the opportunity to go back and study that like I want to yet to see what really went on with that.
Could you do some investigation and find out for our next study session as to why Scottsdale, as the citizens decide that wasn't what they wanted to do?
There could be as many reasons as...
Oh, yeah, true.
There might be one general consensus.
True.
But your point about, Beth, about participation and 100,
Yes.
we see it here. I hope it's better. I guess you get a taste of it when your first neighborhood thing here next week or this week. Is it next week?
Tuesday.
See what happens.
You don't feel like you have a voice, and you don't feel like you understand it enough to be a part of it.
So you see this little flyer, if you can spread it around, if you live in an HOA, even though the city's going to do their best to notify all that, when it comes personally from somebody, it usually holds a little more weight.
I'll do it.
All right, anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, unanimous. We are adjourned till next month.